When you stop people-pleasing, toxic people do not get confused. They get strategic. Because your compliance was never kindness to them. It was access, convenience, leverage, and control. The moment that access disappears, their mask shifts, and suddenly you meet their real character. And if that change shocked you, it means you were trained to normalize it. Maybe you thought setting one simple limit would create respect, space, or at least honesty. Instead, they got colder, louder, guiltier, meaner, or suddenly became the wounded victim. That is not random, and it is not proof you did something wrong. It is what toxic people do when your need to keep peace stops protecting them. So if you feel confused, guilty, shaky, or tempted to go back, stay here. By the end, you will hear their behavior clearly and protect yourself without drama. I know how disorienting this feels because the backlash can look personal, even intimate. You finally say no once, and suddenly you are selfish, cold, disrespectful, ungrateful, difficult. You start wondering whether you changed too much, pushed too hard, or became someone harder to love. You became harder to use, and manipulative people feel that loss immediately, deeply. First, they act like your boundary is a misunderstanding that just needs more explaining. They ask again, then differently, then emotionally, hoping your clarity will collapse into old habits. You said, "I am not available tonight," and they respond like negotiations are still open. You're not confused by your answer. They're checking whether it can be moved. That is why one of your strongest phrases is, "My answer is the same." Just calm repetition, because toxic people often feed on your need to be understood. Then they move to guilt, because guilt kept you available long before respect ever did. A parent says, "After everything I have done, this is how you treat me." A boss says, "I guess commitment just means something different to you now." Same tactic, different costume, and both are trying to make your limit feel morally wrong. But guilt is not proof you harmed someone. Sometimes it is proof conditioning got activated. Then comes the phrase, toxic people love when access gets interrupted. You have changed. And sometimes they say it with sadness, which makes manipulation feel almost innocent. What you changed often means you stopped agreeing, overgiving, absorbing blame, and staying easy. They miss the version of you that cost you your sleep, voice, and self-respect. And if you are not careful, you will try proving your goodness instead of protecting it. Another thing toxic people do is punish the boundary without admitting they are punishing it. They go cold, disappear, delay, withhold warmth, withhold information, or suddenly become impossible to reach. That silent treatment is not always distance for peace. Sometimes it is punishment disguised as space. The goal is simple. Make the boundary feel so emotionally expensive that you stop using it. That is why one of your hardest strengths is learning not to rescue the silence. Pause, breathe, keep your tone flat, and let their discomfort belong to them. Then there is the public-private split, which confuses people-pleasers more than open cruelty. In public, they are charming, helpful, calm, and even weirdly generous to everyone watching. In private, they punish your limits with sarcasm, coldness, selective memory, or subtle undermining. A coworker smiles in meetings, then tells your manager you have become difficult lately. A friend says, "Of course I understand," then starts excluding you and acting mysteriously hurt. This is image control, because private control gets weaker once you stop performing your old role. And once direct pressure stops working, many toxic people switch to confusion tactics. They ask loaded questions that sound caring but are really designed to reopen your boundary. "I'm just worried about you" can mean, "I need information to regain leverage." Fake concern is powerful because it makes you feel cruel for noticing the manipulation. But not every question deserves your history, your wound, your reasons, or your emotional paperwork. Sometimes the cleanest answer is, "I am fine," followed by nothing else at all. So they mock your tone, question your maturity, or call your boundary dramatic. You say no once, and suddenly they act like you became arrogant, rude, or unstable. That reaction is not a character assessment. It is a pressure tactic, plain and simple. They are trying to make self-respect feel socially dangerous, especially if approval once controlled you. This is where "that does not work for me" becomes more powerful than a long defense. Short truth sounds stronger because it does not beg permission to exist at all. Suddenly there is a crisis, a favor, a family emergency, a last-minute need. The timing is not always coincidence. Sometimes it is a test of your old programming. If you abandon your boundary instantly, they learn your limit only exists under easy conditions. Real boundaries are proven under pressure, not while everyone is calm and agreeable. That is why "not this time" matters, even when your body still feels guilty saying it. They remind you what you used to do, what you used to tolerate, how easy things were. But your previous availability was not informed consent if it came from fear. Toxic people benefit when you confuse your old coping strategy with your true personality. You were never born to over-explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. They complain about you to relatives, co-workers, mutual friends, or whoever still believes their version. Now the message is not just "come back," but "look what happens when you don't." Smear campaigns are usually image control after private control starts failing behind closed doors. They need you to look unreasonable so they do not have to face their behavior. And this is where over-explaining can accidentally help them more than silence does. Sometimes the stronger move is simple, documented, calm, and extremely boring looking. Here is something people miss. Toxic people often become nicest right after you pull back. They text warmly, act reflective, promise change, or subtly remember how special you are. That softness can be sincere sometimes, but often it is access management, not growth. Watch whether respect remains after your next no, your next delay, your next limit. Anybody can act warm when they think warmth will reopen the door. This is also why healthy people and toxic people react so differently to boundaries. Healthy people may feel disappointed, confused, or even annoyed, but they can handle one. They ask questions without punishment, adjust without theatrics, and do not weaponize your honesty. Toxic people treat your boundary like an attack because it limits access, leverage, convenience, or control. But here is an important nuance, because not every difficult person is automatically toxic. That does not make their behavior okay, but it changes the strategy you may need. Some situations require less explaining, more documentation, more distance, and a slower exit. Especially with a toxic boss, a volatile parent, or anyone holding practical power over you. So let us talk about what actually protects you when the backlash starts. First, stop treating every accusation like a problem you must solve immediately inside yourself. When they say you are selfish, cold, rude, ungrateful, ask what they lost. Selfish can mean unavailable. Cold can mean calm. Rude can mean no longer agreeing automatically. The label tells you what boundary hurt their access, not who you really are. The more detail you offer, the more material they have to cross-examine. A manipulative coworker hears reasons as information they can repeat without your context. Your sentence does not need a courtroom behind it to be valid or respected. Third, learn the difference between a boundary and a demand for their agreement. A boundary is about what you will do, not forcing them to approve it. "I am available during work hours" is a boundary, not an invitation to debate loyalty. "I am not discussing this" is a boundary, not disrespect, cruelty, or emotional abandonment. Toxic people hate boundaries because boundaries expose how much of the relationship depended on your bending. Watch your body. If every call leaves you foggy, guilty, shaky, or defensive, pay attention. Some people do not need to scream loudly to dominate your reality and weaken confidence. They just need to leave you doubting your own memory, tone, motives, or fairness. Fifth, use fewer words and stronger edges when someone keeps pushing the same line. Try "no," then stop. Try "I already answered that," then stop again. Or say "we are not doing this," and refuse to drag the conversation further. Say less. Hold eye contact briefly and do not soften your no into confusion. When you explain too much, you accidentally act like your boundary needs approval to exist. They hear the question mark hiding inside your sentence and move straight toward it. Calm power sounds different. It sounds like you already chose, and your body knows it. They sense the old door closing and they throw every familiar tool at it. If several tactics appear at once, it usually means your boundary is actually working. People do not fight that hard against limits that never change their access. And here is a deeper truth most people miss until they are exhausted. Toxic people were often comfortable not because the relationship was healthy, but because you were absorbing. You were cushioning their immaturity with your empathy and calling it loyalty for years. Of course they react when that system shuts down. They were living inside it. So when they call you difficult, pause and translate it before it enters your identity. Difficult may mean you stopped volunteering for discomfort just to keep everybody comfortable. Selfish may mean you finally included yourself in decisions that always used to exclude you. Cold may mean your tone no longer leaks panic when someone disapproves of your boundary. Change may mean healed enough to notice what once felt normal but was never healthy. If you are grieving, you are not just losing a person, you are losing a fantasy. The fantasy that clearer love would fix them, that better words would soften them. The fantasy that if you were patient enough, they would eventually treat your heart gently. Letting go of that hope hurts, but it also returns power you kept outsourcing. Because the real shift is not getting better at arguments with toxic people. It means being less available for conversations where truth gets punished and confusion gets rewarded. Less available for roles built on fixing, soothing, translating, absorbing, and earning basic respect. Less available for people who only feel close to you when you are disappearing. You are standing in silence where old chaos used to tell you who you were. You are learning that saying less does not make you weak, it makes you legible. People who respected you only when you overfunctioned were never respecting the real you. So if someone gets uglier when you get healthier, believe the information immediately. If every boundary turns into your trial, stop calling it a communication problem. Some people understand you perfectly, they just dislike what understanding would require from them. And remember this when the guilt rises and your old reflex starts twitching. You do not owe unlimited access to people simply because they are upset. You do not owe warmth in exchange for basic decency towards your own limits. You do not owe your peace to anyone who only values you unsettled. What you owe yourself is honesty, repetition, and the courage to disappoint manipulative people. Sometimes healing looks less like forgiveness and more like removing your availability from disrespect. Sometimes strength sounds like no, spoken once quietly, without defending your right to exist. Sometimes self-respect sounds like nothing at all, because you finally stopped arguing with manipulation. If this hit home, name the tactic you keep seeing and practice one clear phrase. Protecting your peace is not cruel. It is how your real life finally begins.